Couple of fighters that are always down to bang. Coming up this weekend, we have a giant fight between the former featherweight champion Max Holloway taking on the uncrowned champion, the people's champion out of Mexico. We have Yair Rodriguez, and both these guys coming into this fight off of very, very different circumstances, because for Max Holloway, he is coming off of one of the best performances of his entire career, which seems like crazy to say, but you look at his last fight against Calvin Kattar, it was a 5-round main event. It was an absolute war, and you continue to see Max Holloway just rack up these wins where he volume strikes, he throws power, he throws shade at his opponent during the fight, and now he's getting into the habit of talking to the commentary team as he goes. It's almost like he's bored with the sport as he's competing in some of these giant mega fights. So for Holloway, obviously he had those two very, very close fights against Alexander Volkanovski. I won't bore you with the details. Did I watch the fight 49 times? I'm not Luke Thomas. I'm on the northern side of the border. But Matt, when I look at this one, Max Holloway coming off one of the most impressive performances of his career, Yair Rodriguez coming off of a very, very wonderful win, but it was a very, very long time ago. It was a couple of years ago when he fought Jeremy Stephens. It feels like, to me, it was only last year, but I could say the same thing about his fight with the Korean Zombie. It feels like that was only last year, that big Denver 25th anniversary card. So, Matt, I absolutely love the fight. Again, this is a Fight Night Picks marquee fight. It's a striker's paradise. I have so many things that I can say about this fight. And with that, I hand it off to you. I know you're equally as excited.
In 2019, I remember you said something on this channel, and it was one of the first times we'd referred to this in any video, and it was just, oh, if Dana White gave me the ability to make any fight in the UFC, what would it be? I'm not going to lie. The first fight I ever imagined in my mind was this one right here. That's how excited I am for this weekend's main event, because a lot of people forget, and I'm going to give us like a beef history here, so we're going to go back a little ways. When Max Holloway had initially won the featherweight title, I think it was 7-Eleven had run like this UFC inspired big gulp type of a promo where on the outside of their cups, they just had like UFC champions on it. It was just like it was a promo piece, you know. Max Holloway wasn't actually the champion they chose to be on the cup. They chose just contender Yair Rodriguez. Now, Max Holloway tweeted out about that and like a picture of it, and it was like, oh, this is really funny. This happened years ago, though. I'm really surprised I even remember this. So this is kind of like, this is more personal for Max Holloway, I think, that people realize, because when Max was champion, he wasn't really marketed as well as people like him now. Like, it's kind of weird. He almost like, he wasn't that popular when he first got the belt, was very exciting afterwards, and then everybody liked him. The UFC was really trying to build up Yair Rodriguez as their next golden boy in the featherweight division. Like, people have to go all the way back to 211 when he got his ass kicked by Frankie Edgar, but he was the favorite going into that fight against Edgar, and I think I thought he was going to win. I knew a lot less about MMA back then, but still. Yeah, like the hype was real around Rodriguez. He was supposed to be the next in line for the title that Holloway himself had already held. And it was one of those weird situations where we treated Rodriguez like he was the prospect and Holloway like he was the more established champ. When you look at their ages, they're both only 29. Like, I know Holloway's about a year older than him, but you get what I mean. Like, they are very close in their age, although it feels like Holloway has done so much more throughout his MMA career. And it really is unfortunate that Rodriguez hasn't been able to stay consistent the last, like, 3 or 4 years. Because, listen, would he beat everybody in the top 15 every single fight with his style? Because he is so flashy. I'm sure he's going to get tired in some fights because of the way he strikes. Yes, but we almost kind of robbed ourselves the ability of seeing him go like 7-3 against the top 10 because it's a real big disservice. Because with Rodriguez, there's a way I can sell his game to where he beats up the front leg of Max. He keeps this at kicking range, not at boxing range. And he can actually really frustrate Holloway on his entries and in the open space throughout the cage. But the problem is he hasn't really been able to show it these last 2 years. So even if I do think he's been able to make those improvements with his overall game, I can't really point to any singular performance throughout the last 700 days. So it's kind of like the Covington Usman argument, where it was, even if you think Covington's made improvements since their first fight, he hasn't been in there to show those improvements off. That's kind of the thing with Rodriguez. Even if you think he's a much better version than the fighter who fought Jeremy Stephens, you can't point to any single fight to prove it.
So have we not talked publicly about that? Why not?
Right.
Yeah. Huh. I don't think he's going to fight soon. You're supposed to say, is he hurt? And then I say no.
Is he hurt?
And
What's going on?
then you say, does it have to be so mysterious? And I say, we didn't announce it. I don't know why we didn't, but yeah, I don't know what the deal is. It's actually none of my business what's going on there. So when it comes out, it will come out. Matt, remember that when Dana White was talking about Yair Rodriguez and he was being super cryptic about it? Has Yair Rodriguez fought since then? No. Did you even recognize the quote? No. That was back in November of last year. That was this time last year. Yeah, that's how long ago that was. Oh my goodness.
That feels like it was 2 months ago.
The activity for Rodriguez, though, 2014, he fights Leonardo Morales, UFC 180. He wins the Ultimate Fighter, beats Charles Rosa, 2015. Dan Hooker, 2015. Andre Fili, 16. Caceres, 16. BJ Penn, 2017. Loses to Frankie Edgar, 17. Takes about a year and a half off. Beats Korean Zombie. Takes a year off. Fights Jeremy Stevens. Fights him again a couple months later. That was, October 2019. He was booked against Zabit. He fractured his ankle. He was booked against, this fight was already booked in July. And then he had that weird, where do we go now? Like Guns N' Roses moment. And I know, extenuating circumstances. I'm not even going to talk about them. I'm just going to say we've been robbed of one of the most exciting fighters' primes, just like his former opponent he was supposed to get. Zabit, same thing.
The good news, though, is he still only is 29 years old. Like, if he beats Max Holloway, could you imagine? Like, this is what I mean. Max Holloway is such a good fighter that Yair Rodriguez is a plus 400 in a fight. I never thought Yair Rodriguez would be a 4-1 underdog. Like, if he fought Robert Whittaker, I thought he might have these kinds of odds. I didn't think anybody in the featherweight division would ever be this big of a favorite, but that just speaks to the type of fighter Max is in the division. It was really interesting. I'm just going to say this. Luke Thomas was talking about who his Hall of Fame fighters would be in the UFC. And there's not very many of them right now, but Max Holloway is one of the few guys who is still in his prime, still probably has a lot to do in the sport, but it still feels like he's already accomplished enough to be one of the greatest fighters in the sport's history.
100%. And it's unfortunate because he somewhat gets overshadowed by McGregor beating Aldo. And, obviously Jose Aldo, greatest featherweight of all time. So I really do think about him that way, but Max Holloway, if he continues to win, if he's able to beat Volkanovski down the road in a trilogy, who knows? But you're right. You bring up the odds. Holloway open to minus 375 right now. The public's like them so much that he's up to a minus 608. Rodriguez open to plus 300. He's plus 435. Yeah, again, if you asked me about this fight like 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, Jesus, neck and neck. It's dead even. It's crazy to look at it that way. You look at the stat line again. Who's fought more recently, who throws a lot more volume. With Holloway, his strikes landed per minute, they're way above and beyond what you have out of Yair Rodriguez, who's more of a power shooter. But if you look at it for Holloway, 7.26 significant strikes landed per minute to 4.33 for Rodriguez. Holloway does absorb more at 4.58 to the 3.13 Rodriguez, but the defense and the accuracy are up just barely a tick for Holloway in his favor. 84% takedown defense from Holloway. And again, for Rodriguez, where are we training out of now? Looks like Valley Flow striking systems where you have great coaches there. And we've talked about the gym there. I mean, I'll throw one name in it. Chile's Ignacio Bahamondes is a guy that trains there. Perfect guy to get ready for a certain fight like this. A guy that can use his length and his reach and whatnot. Similar to the way that Holloway's able to do it.
Too.
Izzy Martinez. Yep, you're right. And he spent time at the BMF ranch. He spent time at Jackson Wink maybe in the past too, same region, same area. Like we could really point to different gyms, so on and so forth. But for me, again, you got to prove it to me. You got to be active in the cage. That's just the thing that, again, a minus 600 line on Max Holloway feels really silly. But again, he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. And he's only ever lost to some pretty good guys.
Max is like the Wilt Chamberlain of MMA. He really is. Like, we're going to look at his significant strike numbers at a certain point, like down the road, and they're going to be so far ahead of the next closest person that we're going to be like, okay, what was he actually doing in his fights? Because the volume striking that he's able to put out is ridiculous. He's already landed the most significant strikes in UFC history, and he's still in his prime. Like, he could have 10 more fights.
Yeah.
Now,
so you're telling me that in 1983-84, in 70 games, Mario Lemieux had 282 points? I'm sorry. What? Like, that's possible? It's the same deal.
Exactly. We're like, your kids won't believe the type of numbers that Max Holloway used to put up. It's going to be wild. But this is the thing. Yair Rodriguez, I think, is a more dangerous fight than Francis Ngannou. Now, I know that's a ridiculous thing to say. Hear me out, please. With Francis, you know what you have to worry about. It's the left uppercut. It's primarily punches. Like, you know that any of them could put you away with just one, but you at least can understand what threats are coming your way. With Yair, he is one of the rare few where it's how do you get a read on him if he doesn't even know what he's going to do next? We said this about Corey Sandhagen and his fight against Petr Yan, and he started to tire down as that fight progressed, and we saw what Yan was able to do. I think this fight's going to be very similar to that one. I could see Yair having a good first round, even having a decent second round, because I think Rodriguez is underrated boxing, if we're being honest. I think he might be able to get a couple shots in on Holloway, but the problem is when you're fighting a kicker, the primary goal is to crash the distance and not give them time to set up their kicks. Who crashes distance better than Max Holloway in the UFC? Nobody. There is not a single fighter.
Kyle Bochniak.
Yeah, Kyle Bochniak. Like, normally guys pressure you with their wrestling or their clinch, and that's how they pressure guys forward. Holloway's like Vasily Lomachenko. He pressures you with a threat of violence. And I know that sounds like I'm being dramatic, but it's the truth. He's pressuring you with his striking, and he's also really elusive himself. I know he gets hit a good amount just because he gets into crazy fights, but when you actually look at him in the pocket, he's able to get in, land his combination, and get out before you can respond. Like, even look back at that crazy highlight from the Kattar fight. Kattar's a really, really good MMA boxer. Max Holloway hits him with a no-look right hand that breaks his nose, misses like 7 punches away from him, circles away, and then resets. Like, he's not only a really technical fighter, he's a fan-friendly one too. I don't know a single person that likes MMA and dislikes Max Holloway. Like, listen, we don't cheer for anybody here. I know that. But, like, Max Holloway is one of the most aesthetically pleasing fighters to watch in the UFC roster. And I do expect him to do the classic Holloway, put a heavy amount of volume on Yair, probably go to the body a lot. And then I even expect a finish. I don't think Yair has the chin or the durability of Calvin Kattar.
1,048 total votes over on Tapology, Matt. I know what the percentage is already. If I'm 95% Holloway, 42% by decision, 51% by knockout. For the 5% that have Rodriguez, 42% by knockout.
Caleb Plant's a really good boxer, but he boxed one of the greatest fighters of all time his last time out. Yair Rodriguez is faced with a very similar challenge, where he himself is a very good MMA striker, but the problem is we're asking you to do something that, like, very few people can. And this is the thing. The guys who have beat Max Holloway possess 2 tools that Yair doesn't. Dustin Poirier was able to hurt him on the feet with his boxing. That's something nobody in the UFC can do other than Poirier, probably, because he's a good combination of technique, cardio, and power. And Alexander Volkanovski is so smart that he almost played like the possessions game in basketball or like the time management game in football. He made it less about the fighting and more about what's going on in the cage. Yair, I don't think has that fight IQ or that power. So that's why I think Holloway's such a big favorite. There's my last.
And I mean, it's going to be a weird one, but I mean, if you're a hockey fan, you might dig this one, especially if you're on the West Coast. You look at the Edmonton Oilers and you have 2 great players, right? Like 2 year-over-year MVPs. But who does everybody think about? Who does everybody think about as that flashy guy? You saw him, what was it, last weekend when he scored that goal and he skated around all 5 guys on the ice while also bringing the puck outside of the zone. I'm talking, of course, of Connor McDavid. And if you look at McDavid, yes, does Yair Rodriguez actually possess some of those qualities? For sure. But Max Holloway possesses those qualities in and of itself, but also the workmanship and the dedication that you need to get stuff done in that octagon. So for me, I'm going to go with the guy who's just been there, gone consistently to the well, and fought those upper echelon guys that pose those challenges. And oh, by the way, if we want to play that game, how did Frankie Edgar make out when he fought Max Holloway?
Got out volumed really bad and got all of his takedowns defended.
Yeah, so Matt, for me, going with Max Holloway. For yourself, going with Holloway. If you disagree with this, you let us know down below in the comments section. It was an away game for me, setting up in an undisclosed location. But Matt, I'm really looking forward to it. It's a great card coming up this weekend. Of course, we have question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims. Last weekend's episode, because of you, the fans out there listening on the podcast, out there, Spotify, iTunes, tuning in every week on YouTube, tossing us a like, all that stuff. It really does grow the channel. It goes a long way and it really does help us out. So we certainly appreciate you. I just want to say that from me to you. I know Matt echoes those sentiments. When you're helping out the sponsors, you help us out, all that jazz. But really, at the end of the day, I just want to thank everybody out there for making this an awesome show, because it's something that I look forward to coming back every single week. People might look at some of these fight night cards and go, Leah Letson's fighting Felicia Spencer on a main card. Why should I get excited about that? I try to get you excited. I really do. And I get myself excited about these fights. So hopefully that shows through. You enjoy this week. And Matt, I can't wait for question mark kicks on Saturday.
Have a great week, everybody.
All right. Well, keep it locked in with Fight Night picks. And as we always say,
let's get into it.
Let's get into it.